Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nugentino Cinema. And I'm joined again today by Kylie. How are you?
I'm good, Drew. How are you doing?
I'm good. And today we're here to review Welcome to LA. And this is I think, 1976 film by Alan Rudolph. And it stars Harvey Keitel, Sissy Spacek, Sally Kellerman, Denver Pyle, Keith Carradine, among many others. There's just a few off the top of my head. But it's produced by Robert Altman, which I know would have been big at the time. I think Robert Altman was just coming off of like Nashville, and this director, Alan Rudolph, had worked with Robert Altman. Like he was an assistant director of his, and they had a working relationship. And I think he co-wrote one of Altman's movies. I think it was Buffalo Bill and the Indians. But so this was Alan Rudolph's first film, and it was produced by Robert Altman. And I saw it for the first time in like 2016, and I've always had like a weird sort of fascination with it. I can't even really quantify it. It's hard to explain. I think a lot of it has to do with the music in the movie, but which is done by Richard Baskin. I can go into some of his background in a minute, but yeah. But what were some of your initial thoughts on this movie?
Um, Initial thoughts. I really enjoyed Sissy Spacek and uh Geraldine Chaplin. So Sissy Spacek is like the housekeeper, and then Geraldine Chaplin is Harvey Keitel's wife,
Mm-hmm.
who um
I forgot to mention Geraldine Chaplin, she is related to Charlie Chaplin. I think she's his
I
daughter.
thought I thought she was. I was unsure of like what the relationship was there, but
Mm-hmm.
I figured she was. Um, but she like kind of has this hobby of going to see movies and dressing up like Camille, I think is the name
Mm-hmm.
of the character.
Yeah,
So I really enjoyed those two characters, and then also like seeing Harvey Keitel so young.
yeah, that's pretty cool.
Um, but I think like ultimately the storyline was kind of like muddled for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the music was just like a little bit too intense.
Yeah. Yeah, they play a lot of songs like over and over again, like the same songs. And
Yeah.
I don't know, there's something about I really like it, but that's just a personal like I like the vibe of it. But it is like very blaring. Like sometimes it's like really loud and they'll play like the same things over and over. Um
It's
but
like
and
like driving home like LA, the city of the one night stand.
yeah, just yeah, yeah, exactly. But it's interesting, this movie, the music's done by Richard Baskin, who's the son. I don't know the name of the guy, but the guy who founded Baskin Robbins. And
No.
yeah, for real, he really is the son of that guy. And so in the movie, Keith Carradine is the son of a yogurt like magnate, I guess. But that's pretty much mirroring the story of Richard Baskin. So I think it was written or kind of inspired by Richard Baskin's life, or at least part of it. Um, and so Keith Carradine's character is kind of like a mirror of Richard Baskin, but Richard Baskin is in the movie as the guy who's singing the songs. Like he's in the studio, like so Keith Carradine's like is like writing the songs, and then they're performed by this other guy, and that guy is Richard Baskin. But
So
uh,
he's like multi-talented, I guess.
yeah, and he ended up. I think he directed a couple movies, but I haven't seen them. I just saw in his filmography there was some that he directed in the '80s, but they seem to be pretty low profile. There was one called like Rock and Roll Hotel or something.
Oh, I've heard
Um,
of that.
mhm. But yeah, I just there's something about this movie. There's just I've heard some compare it to Magnolia. Um, I don't think I think they're pretty different movies, but just in the style of like this, like a group of people exploring that group of people within LA. You have that basic kind of structure there,
Yeah.
and then it also seems to be coming off of Nashville, which was a similar sort of structure and would have been successful. And I think it was nominated for like Best Picture and stuff. And Alan Rudolph worked on that movie. Robert Altman directed it, and Robert Altman's producing this. But it seems like they're trying to take that sort of, I don't know, framework and do it in a different way. But
Did Robert Altman make Shortcuts before or after this?
After.
Okay.
This would be 76, and I think Shortcuts was like 93.
Okay, because I had seen some comparisons of like this to Magnolia, but to me it felt a lot like Shortcuts.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. The vibe. It's kind of like a sun-soaked, I don't know, just LA vibe. But yeah, I like some of the scenes just of like driving around, like Keith Carradine driving around. You were talking about like some of the loose story structure, and I can definitely see that. Like it's not like it doesn't all sort of piece together. It's like really loose. But I like some of the. I almost felt like there was like a dream logic there. Like it felt like a lot of scenes were just him thinking, or like certain characters just thinking about people, and it would flash to different like images that seemed to just be in their heads. So I thought that was interesting.
One thing that I did enjoy about it, in like saying that it has like a dream logic, is that like all of the women at some point will be somewhere and they'll like say something that's like intended to be deep or insightful, and then they just like look into the camera for like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And I thought that was great.
Yeah.
But yeah, all in all, I think it was a little bit too loosely structured, but I'm also one of those people where like mega cast movies typically either work for me and they don't, because I really like Shortcuts.
Yeah.
But then I don't know, it's just like gets to
I think
some,
Shortcuts has more of a punch than this. Like it has
yeah,
like a lot of more interesting storylines and like different themes that are being explored. But this is pretty simple. Like it's just people looking for love in LA. That's about it.
right.
Yeah, but and people having affairs and people feeling yearning for something that they don't have. But that's about it, I think. But and a lot of it, like I was trying to think, like there's not a lot of resolution to things. Like you have like or not Richard Baskin, but the I forget his name. Carol. I think it's Carol Barber,
Oh,
played by
Keith
played by Keith
Carradine.
Carradine. And so his dad like wants him to take over his business, and he's like, it's not for me. And his dad's sort of upset, and he's like, I don't deserve, like, you barely ever talk to me, and I want you to like, I wanted to see you at Christmas and all these things. But I don't think they ever really resolved the relationship between him and his dad. It was sort of just set up and then left.
Right. Like at the party, I think that's like pretty much,
Yeah.
I think it's like at the party and then they're in his office and he's like, his dad's like, yeah, I get to sit here and like have my hair cut and get a manicure in this chair if I want to, and kind of like you could have all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but
Yeah.
he still like just doesn't want it.
Yeah. The only real resolution in terms of like a traditional arc that I can think of is maybe Harvey Keitel coming to appreciate his wife more at the end. But yeah, other than that, it's sort of just a loose like hangout movie. And for me, I like it mostly just based off the vibe. I just really like the vibe. Yeah.
Um, so one thing that I kind of enjoyed thinking about, and I've been kind of chewing on since I watched it last. Did I watch it? I think I watched it last night. Was there is this scene where Geraldine Chaplin is, she's gone to see one of her films and she's sitting on the side of the road, and Keith Carradine like drives up in his car and she's like sitting on the curb and they're talking back and forth, and he's like, do you need a ride? And she's like, well, I don't drive. And he's like, no, I'm driving.
Yeah.
And then she says the sleep of reason produces monsters, and there wasn't really any context for her to say that, I don't think.
She would say all
But,
kinds of things that just seemed like out of place, or that was one criticism I can say is like I feel like there is a reason for that quote, but I feel like they tried to like make her overly quirky and just strange. Like
mhm.
her coughing was kind of grating on me.
Yeah, she thinks she's dying, and yeah, but so she attributes that like quote to Benjamin Franklin, and I think she just kind of like pulled that out of thin air. And uh, Carol is like, no, Francisco Goya said that. And so it's like the title of this etching that was done in the 1700s by
Mhm.
this Spanish artist. Um, and it's like a self portrait of the artist, and he's like got his head down on like a table, and there's all these monsters behind him.
Yeah.
And it's in reference to what is it? I think it's like this Spanish like enlightenment is going on. So it's kind of talking about moving towards like exploring scientific knowledge, um and kind of going more in that direction. And
Yeah.
so I was like thinking about like how does that tie into this, and is it just her saying like she wants to be um aware of the things going on around her, like aware that her husband's having an affair, or like where is she going with that quote? Is she just saying something to say it?
Mhm.
So I kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
I actually did think about it when she was saying it during the movie, and I feel like without any of the context, because I didn't know any of that previously about the etching and whatnot, but um I just kind of took it as because I thought about it when she repeats it to Harvey Keitel, like they're having a fight and she's like, says the quote again, and then like so I kind of just took it as because the sleep of reason creates monsters, so I took it as just like he's like towing the company because she says that quote and then she's like Goya said it and he was right, and he's like why don't you go marry Goya, but I just took it as like she's saying like you're towing the company line, like you're trying to like fit into this bubble, and be this like perfect like businessman, and that's like the reason. It's like just like fitting into a box or like what you're supposed to be, and then like she's trying to do something different because she's doing very strange things. She just wanders the streets all day and like rides in taxi cabs, and so she's doing something sort of outside the norm. But I thought she was saying because she feels like he's not doing her right for various reasons, so she feels like he's this reasonable man, but he's not fully good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I could see that. I was kind of like thinking in the same vein of like just kind of like if she's ignoring what he's doing, then she's kind of creating a monster and like making the situation or contributing to the situation being worse,
Yeah.
essentially,
Hmm.
is where I landed.
Yeah.
But I think she was probably my favorite character aside from Sissy Spacek.
Yeah, I really like Sissy Spacek's character, but I didn't and there wasn't like much there in terms of like characterization or like a story or like anything going on. And there's like some strange scenes where she's like attacked by that one guy who's like a furniture salesman. And then that was just sort of like was left hanging. And then like the next scene she's just fine. And I don't know.
And he's like married to the realtor who isn't he married to the realtor?
I think so. Yeah.
And she like wants to be with Carol,
Hmm.
and that just kind of dissipates.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've given it a 4.5, and by now I'm just like sitting and criticizing it. But
No.
but I
Well,
can
you're
definitely see
allowed
all
to
these
be
things.
critical of it and, you know,
Yeah,
like
but
it.
like I said, it's sort of a vibe piece to me. Like I just watch it as like I just like to like linger in it. I don't know how to explain it, but
Well, it's people like going places and talking to each other,
yeah,
essentially, like at its
hmm
very core. Um, and so those are usually like it's about the vibe of it
yeah,
when that's what's happening. There's not a lot of like intense action or anything.
hmm yeah. The part you were talking about where she's sitting on the curb and they have that first conversation, like Geraldine Chaplin and Keith Carradine. That was like sort of I think how I discovered this movie is I found the song "At the Door" by Richard Baskin on YouTube, and I just like watched that montage before I had seen the movie like over and over again of them like in the recording studio, and there's like people playing violins and stuff, and then like it cuts to him pulling up, and then he like offers her this like whiskey or whatever, and just like that was what pulled me into this movie was just the vibe of that song, and then like the like harsh like daylight or like sunshine, like it seems like it's like the early morning or like I don't know, like 10 a.m. or something. And there was just something about like the vibe I just really loved. And like I had so I found that it was like on Kino Blu-ray. And at the time, like I just bought the Blu-ray and like blind bought it and then watched it. But I looked back at my Letterboxd ratings. I think I gave it a 3.5 originally, but then later on, my rating went up and up because I just kept watching it for some reason, and it started like an ongoing fascination with Alan Rudolph's films because I feel like all of I watched more of them, and he has a lot of movies, but they're all in sort of a lower budget range, and they're all sort of like patchy and like not perfect. Like they all sort of have that vibe, but he always does something interesting. And I don't know. I feel like people might be picking up on him a little bit because I've noticed that some of his movies have been playing at like museums and stuff, and even at the Museum of Fine Art Houston, they're playing Roadie, which is his movie that he did with Meatloaf on 35 millimeter, and there's another one called The Moderns, which like takes place in the 30s or maybe the 20s in Paris. They're playing that on 35 millimeter too, but it seems like
What's
some
that?
of his stuff is getting out there. It's called The Moderns.
The moderns. Yeah, the MFAH in Houston has like a really good like film programmer, it seems like.
Yeah. It seems to have gotten better in the last couple of years. Like, because I remember looking like 6 years ago or something, and there would never be anything I was interested in. But in the last few years, there's been a lot of stuff, and they've been showing a lot more like film screenings and whatnot, which has been awesome.
Yeah. I can't remember the last thing that I saw there. Um because it's definitely like been a few years since the last time I went, but I don't know. I just enjoy the MFAH in general and I like that they show movies there sometimes.
Yeah,
Um
yeah. They usually show something like weekly or bi-weekly, or not like twice a week. It'll be different things. Like it'll be like a foreign film or like an opera or sometimes a like repertory movie. I
mhm.
saw Tenet there, funnily enough, 35 millimeter,
Oh
and
wow.
yeah, and there was another one called I think it was called I saw this last year. It was the last thing I saw there. It's called Odds Against Tomorrow, I think, and that was good. It was a '50s movie, and I saw that on 35 millimeter. And I saw Red Rocket like before Tenet. It was
Oh
like 2 years
really?
ago. Yeah, I
I
saw
guess
that
it
with Sean
makes sense.
Baker introducing it.
Oh, that's awesome. I was going to say that makes sense that they would have it screening at the MFAH since we like live so close to
Yeah,
Texas City.
hmm yeah. It was sort of like it had some of the like cast that was in the movie there, like some of the non actors that he used that were like from the area,
Mhm.
and a lot of people or some people like were coming to see it because they were like in the movie and they wanted to see the movie. So it was an interesting experience. It was a part of the Houston Cinema Arts Festival, which is actually a pretty good festival that they do every year. and yeah, I've been to that twice. I saw A Hidden Life a couple. I think A Hidden Life was the first thing I saw there. That was the Terrence Malick movie. It came out in like 2019, and
Mhm.
yeah, I saw that at the Houston Cinema Arts Festival. But yeah,
Yeah, I still haven't seen that. It's been sitting on my list. Um, but I did have a question. So you have seen quite a few of Alan Rudolph's films, right?
mm-hmm.
So I know that he's like worked with Robert Altman. Um, you said he like assistant directed some stuff with him.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so having seen his other films, do you feel like this feels like an Alan Rudolph movie, or does it feel like a Robert Altman movie, or does it feel like a good mix of like both of them kind of working together on it?
It feels like a
Uh,
mix of both in a way. Like it's not that like I don't think Robert Altman really has much input on the movies, even though he's producing a lot of them. But
mm-hmm.
like, but Alan Rudolph is very inspired by Robert Altman, and I feel like it's sort of going for a similar vibe. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, I almost feel like it's like Altman Light. Like you have like Budweiser and Bud Light, and this would be the Bud Light.
yeah,
Um, yeah.
I get that. Because I'm looking at my letterbox right now, and this Welcome to LA is the only Alan Rudolph directed film that I've seen, so I don't have a good gauge of
Mhm.
um what his other films are like, but I did kind of get the feeling while watching this that it felt like someone else trying to make a Robert Altman. So,
Yeah, I think it kind of is that.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I need to see some of his other stuff so that I can make like a proper call on that, because it may be like you said, like it's just a good mix of them and I'm not picking up on his voice so much because I haven't seen any of his other films.
Yeah. Well, I feel like if anything, his voice is more just he has a lot of themes that seem to like cross over in a lot of his different movies. He has Keith Carradine in a lot of his movies. Um, and which Keith Carradine comes from the Altman world, and he was in Nashville, and he was in The Cave, Mrs. Miller. But yeah, I mean, I think he is very. He's a lot like Altman. I think he even would admit that, or he's like aping Altman a little bit. But I don't mind it. Like I still enjoy it. Like his take on it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know, there's a lot of um, artists that I like, visual artists that are inspired by other visual artists, and it's kind of the same thing where um, it feels like the initial person that they're inspired by, but I like their take on it just as
Mhm.
much or more.
Yeah,
So I don't I don't really have an issue with that.
yeah, it's interesting because they're working around the same time. So like you get a lot of people that are also in Altman movies and his movies, like Keith Carradine, Geraldine Chaplin was in Nashville, Sally Kellerman, um, she's like in Brewster McCloud and MASH. Sissy Spacek was in Three Women, so there's tons of crossover there, and it all feels like an Altman cast, pretty much.
I still need to watch Three Women.
Mm-hmm. The Three Women's my favorite Altman movie. Well, I don't know, it's a toss up between that and Shortcuts, but it's right up there.
I love
Um,
Shortcuts.
yeah, same here. And yeah, but I mean, I would recommend. I mean, this is probably my favorite Alan Rudolph movie, but Trouble in Mind is interesting. It's sort of a weird, like, takes place in like an alternate future or something, in this like strange, like fictional city. Um, and it has like one of the actresses from Shortcuts in it. Throughout his career, he always uses like Altman cast members, but that one's interesting. It has Divine in a playing a, but he's not in drag in that movie. He's playing a man. So that's
Oh,
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah, and
Um,
he's playing the villain, so it's an interesting role for him.
what was I gonna ask you? Um, is Do you know if Three Women is on any streaming right now?
I don't think so. I think it might only be available like on the Blu-ray. I mean, you can there's torrents and stuff out there, but I think in terms of like legally, or like you might be able to rent it from like Amazon or something like that, but I don't think it's streaming anywhere.
Okay. Well, We Love Video just reopened like end of July, and I got a membership, so I've been renting some stuff from them,
Hmm.
and it's so when they opened as like a nonprofit, like volunteer run video store.
Yeah.
Um, so they don't have everything inventoried yet. Um, so not everything is out, but next time I go, I'll check and see if Three Women is out. I'm sure that they have it. They have to. They have so much stuff.
I remember
Um,
when I went there, and I don't know how it is now because they don't have the full catalog out. But when I went there before, they had like a whole Altman section. So
yeah, they do. They have like a wall of directors that they're like adding to. There's more every time we go in there. I go probably 2 or 3 times a week.
mhm.
Um, and there's an Altman section, but I don't think I want to say the last time I went, they had The Long Goodbye, Nashville, and Shortcuts out, and maybe one other that I haven't seen.
Yeah, yeah, they have like I remember when I was there, they had like the Gingerbread Man and like weird Altman movies that I haven't like I even have like a hard time finding.
Hmm.
Um, and they had like a lot of stuff that I'd been looking for like forever. Like there was one movie called like Nothing Lasts Forever that was done by this like guy that directed like segments on Saturday Night Live, but he had like a weird style that was very unique, and it was like from the early '80s, and it had Dana Aykroyd and Bill Murray in it, and it's like a lost movie. It's not like very widely available,
Right.
but it's pretty cool they had that. I mean, they had tons of stuff.
Yeah, the first thing that I rented from them was Ricky O, the story of Ricky.
Nice.
And I had been looking for that for a couple of months because it had been recommended to me, and I couldn't I couldn't find it on Blu-ray. I couldn't find it on streaming or like rental or anything, and they had it I think on Blu-ray.
Hmm.
So I was glad to like be able to find that, um, and finally get to watch it. So
Yeah,
super
that's
glad
cool.
that they're back open.
Yeah, yeah, it's a pretty awesome place. So, is it like it's in a new building now?
It's over on North Loop, which is off of North Lamar.
Hmm.
It's a good area. There's like a bar next to it and some shops, and then across the street is like a vintage, they have like vintage furniture and clothing. So it's a like, decently well traveled area. And there's some restaurants and like a coffee shop over there too.
Yeah, that's cool. I remember like I've seen some commercials, like old vintage commercials from my or we love or I love video. Um, and they used to like in the '80s, they like delivered pizza like with a movie. Like you could order a pizza and a movie, and they would deliver it to you.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, I think that's pretty awesome. Those were the days in the '80s and like early '90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's pretty much all I had to say about like Welcome to LA. I would give it a loose 4.5, but I said on my letterbox that this movie is a perfect example of like why I almost like want to give up star ratings because it just doesn't mean anything to put a star rating on it because I sort of just enjoy it and that's about all there is to it. um,
Yeah. No, and that's like I mean, I could rewatch this tomorrow in a totally different like mood and headspace for like no reason other than like I just watched it a second time and it could be like in my top 4 favorites. That's just how watching movies for me goes, and sometimes it's like the more I watch it the less I like it, and sometimes it's the more I watch it the more I like it. So
yeah, for sure.
totally with you on the star ratings, but I try to be as honest as I can at the time.
Well, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So what would your star rating be?
So I rated it a 2.5 yesterday when I watched
Mhm.
it because I was just having such a hard time kind of like keeping up with everybody, and it just like it was so loose and nothing was getting resolved,
Yeah.
and it was just kind of frustrating me. And then the score, or the like musical numbers, were
Mhm.
just like really grating
Yeah.
to me. But I do like hearing you talk about the reasons why you enjoyed them. Like, I understand it. So I gave it a 2.5, but I could like, it's kind of like a loose 2.5. It could be like a 3.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, I mean, I've heard some people refer to the score or the soundtrack as like one of the worst soundtracks of all time. So I think there's a lot of people out there that are like graded by it, but but like personally, I don't know. There was something about it that I like. I mean, he has a very like kind of strange voice or singing style, but I don't know. I just a lot of the songs I really like. Um, and I even listen to some of them on my YouTube playlist while I'm driving.
Well, I wasn't really clear on um whether or not the like, it's the city of the one night stand, like that over and over and over was supposed to be like becoming like kind of absurd,
Mhm,
or is it supposed to be serious and that's like the tone of what's happening like throughout the movie?
mhm,
um and I think if I knew whether or not it was meant to be like serious, or they're like poking fun at something, I would be able to kind of differentiate whether or not I like it. But I feel like it's serious and it was just kind of bad.
yeah, well, honestly, I think it's kinda serious, like, I don't think it was making fun of anything, but,
Right.
yeah. But, yeah, I mean, I don't think the movie, like, takes itself, like, deadly serious, there's still, like, humor throughout it, but yeah, I don't think it's, like, necessarily satirical in any way.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's sort of just doing things, genuinely, but, yeah, I mean, there's, like, some strange things that'll happen through it that are the main things of, like, comedic things that I can think of are, like, Sissy Spacek just, like, randomly, vacuuming shirtless for no reason. Um
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up as like one of the things that I love the most about Sissy Spacek's character is her being like, "Well, it's hot in here, so I'm gonna like take my top off and vacuum and clean the house."
mhm.
And uh Sally, I think it's Sally Kellerman.
Yeah.
Is she the realtor?
Yeah, that's her. Mhm.
And she's like, "Oh no, like you have to put your shirt on. You have to put your shirt on," because she's trying to like um sleep with Carol. And Sissy Spacek's like, "Dude, I'm just hot. Like, I'm not trying to be in a relationship with him. I'm just trying to do my job."
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and I loved that.
Yeah. Yeah, and then her character has some, like, humorous stuff, and then Geraldine Chaplin for sure, but yeah, but other than that, like, I think it's sort of yeah, it's being serious otherwise.
Yeah.
But, yeah. But, I mean, yeah, it's a movie that I'll always sort of come back to just to, you know, vibe with, I guess. But, yeah. Anyway, I think that's all I had to say about it. Did you have any other thoughts?
No, I think that's it for me, but I also think that I will probably give it another watch after talking to you about it and
Yeah.
see what like how it feels after a second watch.
Mhm.
Because usually I try to do that when there's something that I don't enjoy as much as I thought I would. Um,
Yeah.
just like give it another chance.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching the
Yeah,
movie. Yeah, I appreciate it.
yeah.
And yeah, that's about it. So thanks everyone for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.